You cannot be a prince if you are not a philosopher, you will be a tyrant. A great political philosopher of the Renaissance who might have been a Moor was Niccolò Machiavelli, 1469 to 1527. There are, in the history of philosophy, very few who have reached the level of notoriety as Niccolò Machiavelli. His famous treatise The Prince stands apart from all other political writings of the period insofar as it focuses on the practical problems a monarch faces in staying in power, rather than more speculative issues explaining the foundation of political authority. Now, what is a monarch? A monarch is a person who rules a kingdom or empire and is the head of state in a monarchy. The term can also refer to a person or thing that holds a dominant position. A monarch may inherit the right to rule or be selected from a family or cohort. A monarch may be an absolute ruler or a ceremonial head of state with limited power. In a constitutional monarchy, the monarch is head of state, but the government makes and passes laws. Examples of monarchs are a king, queen, or emperor, a sole and absolute ruler of a state or nation, a monarch of international shipping. What is the monarch and butterfly effect? Monarch may also refer to the monarch butterfly, which is known for its highly evolved migration pattern. The etymology of the word monarch comes from the Greek words monos, meaning alone, and archein, meaning to rule. Here is a philosophy almost exclusively comprised of politics. Ethics and religion also make themselves known, but only as tributary to the main theme. It is true that in our modern-day political sphere there is a stigma surrounding his name. This is due, of course, to the hypocritical excoriation of evil-doing from our modern politicians. As such, it is an expression of realpolitik, that is, governmental policy, based on retaining power rather than pursuing ideals. We must forgive them, though, for indeed they must do this to secure the popular votes from suckers. The aim of the Machiavellian philosophy is this: to better understand why states rise, why they fall, and how one might best go about maintaining its stability to the end of slowing this inevitable decomposition. An inevitable decomposition refers to the process where something, typically organic matter, will break down and decay naturally over time, meaning it is a guaranteed process that cannot be prevented once initiated, due to the natural laws of decay and the presence of decomposing organisms like bacteria and fungi. Essentially, it's the idea that all living things will eventually decompose after death. He is confident in his ability to produce such a method of statesmanship since the nature of man never changes. Wise men say, not without reason, that whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past, for human events ever resemble those of preceding times. This arises from the fact that they are produced by men who have been and ever will be animated by the same passions, and they must necessarily have the same results. We must begin by assuming that all men are bad and will, if given the proper circumstances, bare their fangs to acquire what they wish. In like manner they can, if given the proper guidance, be made civil and obedient. If the state is to achieve this, then organized force in all likelihood will be required. Through this force laws can be established, and through these laws habit can be cultivated. Once habits have been formed by the people, inordinate force will no longer be required. Niccolò Machiavelli was born in Florence, Italy at a time when the country was in political upheaval. Italy was divided between 4 dominant city-states, and each of these Machiavelli was a political philosopher, poet, playwright, and historian during the Renaissance period. He wrote The Prince after continually at the mercy of the stronger foreign governments of Europe. Since 1434, Florence was ruled by the wealthy Medici family. Their rule was temporarily interrupted by a reform movement begun in 1494, in which the young Machiavelli became an important diplomat. What is a diplomat? A diplomat is a person appointed by a state, intergovernmental, or non-governmental institution to conduct diplomacy with one or more other states or international organizations. A diplomat is a person who represents their country's interests abroad, working to build relationships with other countries and resolve conflicts. Diplomats are also known as Foreign Service Officers, FSOs. A Prince's Guide, Machiavelli and the Craft of Power. This is a journey into the mind of one of history's most enigmatic political thinkers. In the year 1532, a book titled The Prince emerged from the Italian Renaissance. It was a time of great cultural and political upheaval. Its author, Niccolò Machiavelli, had been a diplomat and political thinker. He had first-hand experience in the treacherous world of Italian politics. Machiavelli dedicated The Prince to Lorenzo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence. He hoped to gain favor and perhaps a position within the Medici court. The book was a guide, a manual for aspiring rulers on how to acquire and maintain power. It was unlike any other political treatise of its time. The Prince is a study in political realism. It strips away the idealism that often clouded political thought. It does not concern itself with ideals or morality. Instead, it focuses on the harsh realities of political life. Instead, it offers a pragmatic and often ruthless approach to leadership. Machiavelli believed that the ends often justified the means. Machiavelli argued that a ruler must be willing to do whatever it takes to preserve his state. This included actions that might be deemed unethical. This could include deception, manipulation, and even violence. To Machiavelli, the stability of the state was paramount. Machiavelli's ideas were considered shocking in his time. They flew in the face of the prevailing moral and ethical standards. He challenged the traditional view of leadership, which emphasized virtue and justice. His perspective was revolutionary and controversial. The Prince was condemned by some as an immoral and dangerous book. It was seen as a threat to the established order. Yet its influence on political thought has been profound. It has shaped the way leaders and thinkers approach the concept of power. Centuries after its publication, The Prince continues to be studied and debated. Its insights into human nature and political strategy remain relevant. Its teachings on power, strategy, and human nature remain as relevant as ever. Modern politicians and scholars still turn to Machiavelli for guidance. The book's enduring legacy is a testament to Machiavelli's keen understanding of the dynamics of politics. His work continues to inspire and provoke thought. A nation-state can either be a republic or a principality, and either old or new. An old hereditary state that has been passed down the generations is easy to rule, but taking control and then holding on to a new state is difficult. The difficulty is reduced if you personally supervise it. An old hereditary state such as a monarchy can be taken by destroying the entire royal family. This is what Alexander the Great did to conquer and hold on to the Persian Empire of Darius III. However, states that are used to freedom must be crushed. For those who are not yet princes, it is possible to rise to become one by carrying out two steps. Follow the example of those in the past who saw their opportunities, and be well armed to keep hold of a new state securely. All resistance must be destroyed by using cruel, swift, and firm methods, but then benefits to the people should be given gradually. A prince must win the favor of the people and dispel any hostility, but he will only be truly secure when he can raise his own army to defend against all comers. Mercenaries cannot be relied on. Neither can other people's armies to be successful. A prince must read history, study war, and know his own land. He must give the appearance of being good, but also know how to be evil. He should not be afraid to be thought of as mean, as giving liberally and spending freely will lead to ruin. He also shouldn't worry about being thought of as cruel, as fear is one of the only things he can control. A prince should be willing to use cunning if needed and deception if necessary. He may or may not be loved, but as long as he is not hated, he is secure. Fortresses are of little use, as even though they can be used to defend against outsiders, they do not stop you being betrayed by your own people. A prince must be purposeful, determined, and unwavering. He must clearly follow one path or another. He should encourage art and craft, commerce and agriculture. Entertain his people with spectacles and festivities, rewarding those who honor his state. Only capable servants should be used by a prince, and he should keep them under control. Anybody who flatters must be avoided. Machiavelli claimed that the once powerful princes of Italy lost their power not through misfortune, but by their own inaction and indecisiveness. Fortune directs half of our actions, but the other half is left for us to direct through hard work, cautiousness, and virtue. Fortune needs to be beaten and dominated. It is often like a torrential river that cannot be stopped, but during periods of calm, preparations can be made to control and minimize the damage. Machiavelli concludes by stating that a leader is needed that will follow the advice in the book to conquer Italy and free her from the barbarians. Realism over morality, Machiavelli's controversial doctrine. Machiavelli's The Prince shocked readers with its blunt approach to power. It separated politics from the realm of ethics. Machiavelli argued that a ruler must be willing to act outside traditional morality. The survival of the state, he believed, justified any means necessary. This pragmatic approach is a key element of what we now call Machiavellianism. It's a term often used negatively to describe cunning, manipulative behavior. But Machiavelli saw it as a necessary tool for rulers facing a dangerous world. His views challenged the idea of a ruler as a benevolent father figure. Instead, he presented a leader who acts decisively, even ruthlessly, for the good of the state. This separation of politics and morality remains a subject of intense debate even today. Machiavelli's ideas continue to spark controversy, but his work forces us to confront the complexities of power. It reminds us that political decisions are often made in shades of gray, not black and white. Here we have the basic formula for the creation of the state. It is best practice, Machiavelli thought, for the ruler of the state to adopt or start a religion. In truth, there never was any remarkable lawgiver who did not resort to divine authority, as otherwise his laws would not have been accepted by the people. For this reason, Machiavelli gives the greatest of respect to those who establish these religions, and the greatest of disdain to those who destroy them, for where the fear of God is wanting, there the country will be destroyed. There is, however, an avenue by which a state may follow to substitute the divine authority provided by religion. This being by fear of the prince, but the lives of princes are short, so religion remains our most trusted path to stability. Though Machiavelli accepts religion, he looks upon Christianity as a failure. He thinks it causes its followers to value death more than life for the sake of going to paradise. Furthermore, it has placed the supreme good in humility and poorness of spirit, which has caused Italy to fall into the hands of wicked and nefarious men. A religion such as that which the Romans adopted would be of more use as it placed its highest virtues in greatness of mind and bodily strength. This ethic of might is right will allow the nation to act according to its best interests without the consideration of what is morally permissible. Where it is an absolute question of the welfare of our country, said Machiavelli, we must admit of no considerations of justice or injustice, of mercy or cruelty, of praise or ignominy. But putting all else aside, we must adopt whatever course will save the nation's existence and liberty. To maintain stability, the state must have a leader or leaders who, without hesitation, will do what must be done. Deceit, violence, whatever must be undertaken for the sake of the state will be considered right and just. When the act accuses him, the result should excuse him. It was a fixation of Machiavelli's to find one who could achieve his lifelong goal of unifying all of Italy. He knew any chance for peaceful union had long since passed. It could only now be achieved by the prince. This is to say, a man who would not let conscience make a coward of him, but would strike with an iron hand, letting his great aim justify all means. Will Durant. When Machiavelli turned to the question of whether it was better for a prince to be loved or feared, he stated that while it would be wonderful for a leader to be both, he should eventually side with fear. Let's just pause and reflect on that statement for a second. I want to believe that the automatic response of a morally sane person to that statement is resistance. Why would you embrace such a paradoxical stance when you know that love should always be the end goal in any mature relationship? Machiavelli suggests that human nature is somewhat ungrateful, fickle, and dissembling. The prince, or any person in power, is like the authority figure that substitutes the parent figure when a person enters adulthood. 4 people in power will always have a huge responsibility towards their followers. This responsibility creates a form of dependency that urges people to keep craving more and hold the prince accountable for most of their needs. Such an intense interplay damages most of the ability to cultivate self-reliance, and people, instead of appreciating the prince's offerings, breed leech-like characteristics. Therefore, a prince needs to resemble characteristics that don't allow others to question his authority. Such a characteristic is fear. Fear, although it still creates a dependency between the ruler and the people, it successfully prevents unwanted behaviors stemming from lack of appreciation. The trick here is to ensure that fear doesn't turn into hatred. Intense, cruel, and unjustified demonstrations of fear can never keep people engaged. Fear needs to be subtly induced in a way that people can justify it. Events of punishment should be subject to convincing reasoning, for people will side with the most persuasive argument. Master of illusion. The master of illusion is a specialist in generating manipulative hallucinations, and will usually possess no other powers apart from that. Did Machiavelli fake his own demise? Adding to the intrigue surrounding Machiavelli is a persistent theory that he orchestrated his own death. This theory claims Machiavelli, facing enemies, chose to disappear. He would then live out his days in secret, free from danger. Fueling this theory is the lack of clear details surrounding Machiavelli's death. Some accounts suggest a sudden illness, while others remain vague. This ambiguity, coupled with Machiavelli's writings on deception, has provided fertile ground for speculation. While intriguing, there is no historical evidence to support this theory. It remains in the realm of speculation, a testament to the mystery Machiavelli still evokes. Yet the idea of Machiavelli staging his own exit adds another layer to his complex persona. It's a testament to his enduring influence that such a theory exists at all. It speaks to our fascination with Machiavelli as a master strategist, a man who understood the power of illusion and deception. Men have imagined republics and principalities that never really existed at all. Yet the way men live is so far removed from the way they ought to live, that anyone who abandons what is for what should be, pursues his downfall, rather than his preservation. For a man who strives after goodness in all his acts is sure to come to ruin, since there are so many men who are not good. In this passage, Machiavelli exudes the totality of his pragmatic ideals. He exposes the duplicity of human nature and explains that being constantly nice will get you nowhere because most people are not that nice. In short, he tries to explain that a prince should destroy the delusion that acting good will always favor him, but at the same time create the illusion that he is actually good, for people respect goodness. In general, some personal characteristics will earn people praise, others condemnation. Courage, compassion, faith, craftiness, and generosity number among the qualities that receive praise. Cowardice, cruelty, stubbornness, and miserliness are usually met with condemnation. Ideally, a prince would possess all the qualities deemed good by others. But this expectation is unrealistic. A prince's first job is to safeguard the state, and alas, harboring bad characteristics is sometimes necessary for this end. Apropos, while exhibiting these bad characteristics, he should do so in a way that projects that the necessary evil is employed for the good of the people. His reputation depends on how effectively and subtly he communicates this. Hedging that reputation should be the most important of his concerns. Side note, Machiavelli also suggests that if a prince decides on many reforms that are unfavorable for the people, he should impose them all together and in a short period of time. After that, he should always try to make things better gradually in order to win people's approval again. As a rule of thumb, people in power should have in mind this: offer good in small bites, and impose bad measures in big chunks and quickly. The mystery of Machiavelli. Tupac Shakur's Machiavellian transformation. Centuries after Machiavelli, the rapper Tupac Shakur would adopt the name Machiavelli. This occurred after Tupac survived a shooting in 1994. He saw the shooting as a turning point, a symbolic death and rebirth. The name change to Machiavelli was more than just a stage name. It represented Tupac's embrace of Machiavelli's philosophy, particularly the strategic use of deception. His posthumous album, released under the name Machiavelli, further cemented this connection. Tupac, like Machiavelli, recognized the power of image and symbolism. He understood that perception could be as powerful as reality. By adopting the Machiavelli persona, he aligned himself with Machiavelli's cunning and strategic thinking. The connection resonated with fans and fueled conspiracy theories about Tupac's own death in 1996. Many believed he had faked his death to escape the dangers of the music industry. This speculation, though unproven, showcased the enduring power of the Machiavellian mystique. Honesty has always been a very crucial element of a congruent and respectable character. When it comes to leadership and politics, though, it will get you so far. The relationship between the prince and the people is quite a turbulent one. People demand actions, but at the same time they are not ready to react maturely to difficult situations. In order to understand the impact this dynamic has in the relationship, we need to work with an analogy. Think of a difficult romantic relationship you had. After the honeymoon phase, reality hits you hard, and most times one of the parties will let their mask of sanity slip. 5 false expectations, neurotic reactions, unmet needs, and increased familiarity will lead to friction and an inability to maintain a stable connection. Deception and survival, the art of faking one's death. The idea of faking one's death holds a certain allure. It's a concept that has fascinated people for centuries, from ancient times to the modern era. It represents the ultimate escape, a chance to disappear and reinvent oneself. For some, it's a way to leave behind a troubled past, while for others, it's a strategic move to outwit enemies and start anew. In Machiavelli's The Prince, this tactic is presented as a viable option for rulers facing insurmountable threats. Machiavelli, a master of political strategy, understood the lengths to which a ruler might go to preserve their power. Machiavelli argued that a ruler must be willing to use any means necessary to preserve his power and the safety of his state. This included deception, manipulation, and even the extreme measure of faking one's death. This included deception, even to the point of feigning death to mislead enemies. By creating the illusion of their demise, a ruler could throw off adversaries, making them believe the threat was gone. By disappearing, a ruler could regroup, gather strength, and potentially return to power when the time was right. This tactic allowed them to bide their time, waiting for the perfect moment to re-emerge and reclaim their position. This theme of strategic deception resonates throughout history. From ancient military tactics to modern espionage, the art of misdirection has been a powerful tool for survival and victory. From ancient military tactics to modern espionage, the art of misdirection has been a powerful tool for survival and victory. The ability to deceive and mislead has often been the difference between life and death, success and failure. The idea of faking one's death while extreme taps into this primal instinct for self-preservation. It's a drastic measure, but one that has been employed by those desperate to escape their circumstances. It's a testament to Machiavelli's understanding of human nature that he recognized the power of such a drastic measure. He knew that in the game of power, sometimes the most extreme actions were necessary to ensure survival. While he did not advocate for it lightly, he acknowledged its potential in desperate situations where survival depended on outwitting one's opponents. In the end, the art of faking one's death is a testament to the lengths to which individuals will go to protect themselves and their interests. In chapters 6, 9 of The Prince, Machiavelli proposes 4 different ways a prince can rise to power. By virtue, when a prince rises to power through his own skill and resources. By fortune, when a prince comes to power through luck or blessing from powerful figures within the regime. By criminal virtue, when a prince rises through cruel immoral deeds and oftentimes execution of his political rivals. By election, when a prince gets elected by the populace. Then, he explains what a prince needs to do after he acquires his position depending on the way he ascended to power. The overarching theme of this idea is that loyalty needs to be constantly scrutinized and bought and resistance to be crushed. Loyalty. The people who decide to be on the prince's side will do so because they can benefit from him and not because they like him. They are bound to the prince and their loyalty is a matter of character and benefits. The prince needs to ensure that the rapacious and overly ambitious shouldn't be trusted, and that the weak-spirited and grateful should be sought after and constantly praised. That is a subtle but great detail to identify. Overly ambitious people can't stay loyal for long. They are also thirsty for power and eventually will try and sabotage those above them. In contrast, people who are weak-spirited will always savor their relationship with a prince because it allows them to feel safe and that they belong to his tribe. Resistance. Resistance is an omnipresent force. That is because people are naturally resistant to change and reform. Especially, people who benefited from the old order will resist fiercely. Those need to be crushed on a whim and fast so that the prince can focus on reassuring the followers of the strength of the new order and the benefits that will follow. Princes who keep the old order around will inevitably need to keep fighting them, and that suggests a waste of time, resources, and trust. This is very dangerous for a prince because he can't waste his resources on many fronts, and that's because it is impossible to satisfy everyone. Therefore, he needs to eliminate distractions and focus most of his efforts and resources to convincing his followers that his is right when they have second thoughts. It was to his greatest delight when, at the age of 29, he met Cesare Borgia, who he thought could be this unifying force. But fortune would not be on the young Borgia's side, and the dual sickness of father and son would dash Machiavelli's hopes and dreams. After the capture of Florence by the Medici, Machiavelli would himself run into a series of unfortunate events. But we may thank fortune here, for without it we may never have heard the name Niccolò Machiavelli. Here was a book revolutionary for its time. It was to be a sort of guide to any ruler interested in achieving success. What sets it apart from any other book of its likeness is its embrace of wickedness as a necessary trait for any ruler to exploit if they wish to acquire and maintain power. It being my intention, he said, to write something that shall be useful to him who comprehends it, it appears to me more appropriate to follow up the real truth of a matter than the imagination of it. So let us uncover the traits which, in the eyes of Machiavelli, comprise the ideal prince. It is necessary that he understands that what is good for the state may not always align with his moral compass. He must know how, when necessity calls, to do wrong and to make use of it or not. Though it is true that in his discourses he does bring attention to those such as the 5 good emperors of Rome, who by the goodness of their character, were able to rule sufficiently without the use of wickedness and deceit. In either case, a ruler must raise and maintain a strong military, but he should keep in mind that oftentimes cunning and deceit achieve more than war, and for this diplomacy should be sufficiently known. For those states that wish to revolt or disobey, he should not hesitate to deploy whatever means necessary to quell the situation. Even cruelty should remain an acceptable avenue. But a fatal mistake that must be avoided is that of continued cruelty, even after obedience has been established. What he appears to be is more important than what he really is, Machiavelli stated. Though a prince need not possess all the virtues, to seem to have them is useful, as for example to seem merciful, loyal, humane, religious and sincere. It is also useful to be so, but with a mind so flexible that if the need arise he can be the contrary. The ability of the prince to uphold this image is indispensable if he is to maintain what he has acquired. The ones who see through this guise dare not oppose the opinion of the many. While the work was a revelation to common peoples, it was not so to the ruling class. After all, it was what they had been practicing for millennia. It was Francis Bacon who said, "Our thanks are due to Machiavelli and similar writings who have openly and without dissimulation shown us what men are accustomed to do, not what they ought to do." So, though he failed in just about everything in life, Machiavelli would succeed in adding his name on the list of history's heroes. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, consider subscribing to the channel. Here my goal is to illuminate history's greatest philosophic minds and ideas. Let me know in the comments below who you would like to see me do a video on in the future, and as always, thank you for talking philosophy with me. Until next time. In chapter 25, Machiavelli tries to conclude his ideas with the main strategy to be followed by countries and individuals in order to increase their chances of success. Free will versus determinism has always been a hot topic among thinkers. Machiavelli's stance on the matter is again very pragmatic. According to him, success is the point where preparation meets opportunity. A person cannot control the world, but he can definitely control most of his actions. Through foresight, people can shield themselves against misfortune and self-sabotage. Moreover, because time changes, a prince needs to adapt and embrace malleable characteristics. On the whole, impetuosity surpasses caution and fortune favors energetic youth over cautious age. The allure of power. Machiavelli's enduring influence. Machiavelli's ideas continue to captivate our imagination because they speak to something fundamental about human nature, our fascination with power. His work delves into the very essence of what it means to lead, to govern, and to influence others. The Prince, despite its age, remains relevant because it provides a framework for understanding the dynamics of power in all its forms. It is not just a historical artifact, but a living document that continues to offer insights into the mechanics of power and governance. We see echoes of Machiavelli's teachings in politics, business, and even our personal lives. His principles are not confined to the grand halls of power, but permeate everyday interactions and decisions. The strategies he outlined centuries ago, the importance of building alliances, the art of negotiation, and the subtle dance of diplomacy, are still employed by leaders today. The need to project strength, to appear formidable even when one is vulnerable, is a timeless tactic. And the willingness to make difficult choices still resonate in today's complex world. These choices often define the success or failure of leaders, and Machiavelli's insights provide a roadmap for navigating these treacherous waters. Perhaps the enduring appeal of Machiavelli lies in his unflinching realism. He did not shy away from the harsh truths of power but embraced them, offering a candid look at the often brutal nature of leadership. He refused to sugarcoat the realities of power, acknowledging its often brutal nature. This stark honesty is both refreshing and unsettling, forcing us to confront the darker aspects of human ambition. In a world where idealism often clashes with pragmatism, Machiavelli's work serves as a stark reminder of the challenges and complexities of leadership. His writings compel us to balance our ideals with the practicalities of real-world governance. His writings offer a glimpse into the minds of those who seek and wield power. They reveal the motivations, fears, and aspirations that drive leaders to make the choices they do. Whether we agree with his methods or not, understanding Machiavelli's principles can provide valuable insights into the motivations and strategies of those who shape our world. His work remains a crucial tool for anyone seeking to understand the intricate dance of power and influence that continues to shape our societies. Concerning things for which men, and especially princes, are praised or blamed. He proposes to describe the truth about surviving as a monarch rather than recommending lofty moral ideals. He describes those virtues which, on face value, we think a prince should possess. He concludes that some virtues will lead to a prince's destruction, whereas some vices allow him to survive. Indeed, the virtues which we commonly praise in people might lead to his downfall. Concerning liberality and meanness, he notes that we commonly think that it is best for a prince to have a reputation of being generous. However, if his generosity is done in secret, no one will know about it, and he will be thought to be greedy. If it is done openly, then he risks going broke to maintain his reputation. He will then extort more money from his subjects and thus be hated. For Machiavelli, it is best for a prince to have a reputation for being stingy. Machiavelli anticipates examples one might give of generous monarchs who have been successful. He concludes that generosity should only be shown to soldiers with goods taken from a pillaged enemy city. Concerning cruelty and clemency, and whether it is better to be loved than feared, he argues that it is better for a prince to be severe when punishing people rather than merciful. Severity through death sentences affects only a few, but it deters crimes which affects many. Further, he argues, it is better to be feared than to be loved. However, the prince should avoid being hated, which he can easily accomplish by not confiscating the property of his subjects. People more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Concerning the way in which princes should keep faith, perhaps the most controversial section of The Prince, Machiavelli argues that the prince should know how to be deceitful when it suits his purpose. When the prince needs to be deceitful, though, he must not appear that way. Indeed, he must always exhibit 5 virtues in particular: mercy, honesty, humaneness, uprightness, and religiousness. That one should avoid being despised and hated. Machiavelli argues that the prince must avoid doing things which will cause him to be hated. This is accomplished by not confiscating property and not appearing greedy or wishy-washy. In fact, the best way to avoid being overthrown is to avoid being hated. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Machiavelli suggests that in leadership, fear may be a more effective tool for maintaining control and authority. When compared to love or affection, men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries for heavy ones. They cannot. Machiavelli advises rulers to avoid causing minor harm to others, as it may provoke retaliation. It's better to be consistently kind or take decisive action, rather than risk creating enemies through minor offenses. The wise man does at once what the fool does. Finally, Machiavelli emphasizes the importance of acting decisively and promptly, contrasting the wisdom of immediate action with the foolishness of procrastination. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Machiavelli suggests that a ruler's competence can be judged by the quality of his advisors and associates, highlighting the importance of surrounding oneself with capable individuals. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. Machiavelli advocates for strategic thinking and the use of cunning to achieve goals without unnecessary conflict or confrontation. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Machiavelli stresses the importance of adaptability and flexibility in behavior to maintain success, implying that strategies should evolve with changing circumstances. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Machiavelli uses this metaphor to suggest that effective leadership requires both cunning and strength. Knowing when to be strategic like a fox and when to be forceful like a lion, it is better to be impetuous than circumspect, because fortune is a woman, and if she is to be submissive, it is necessary to beat and covers her. Machiavelli advises taking bold action, rather than being overly cautious, using the metaphor of fortune as a woman who must be dominated rather than approached with caution. Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch, because everyone can see but few can test by feeling. Machiavelli suggests that people are more easily deceived by appearances than by tangible evidence, highlighting the importance of perception in influencing opinions. Machiavellian tactics and strategies might come across as quite caustic and even dangerous for some. For me, his works are invariably imbued with a sense of awe, and they constitute a combustible body of omniscience. Actually, The Prince is suggested in most political science programs around the world as a must-read. This is not by accident. Those principles have been espoused and applied by the most successful political figures of our past and our present. Knowing and understanding those principles can be a crucial step forward in redressing the balance within ourselves and eventually within our political system.